Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Strong hand. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. Value your wealth in Bitcoin. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. Offended by selling. Conviction. Deferral of gratification. We're going to talk about that. Holder of last resort. Oh yeah, hello my elite friends. We've got the best guest in the space on the This Week in Bitcoin show. And this week, we've got a holder of last resort in the house. Blockstream Director of Marketing, Neil Woodfine is here. What's up, Neil? Welcome to the show, man.
Hi, Adam. Doing good, thanks. And thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have a real live Blockstream person here. There's a lot of FUD out there around the company that you work for. I mean, tell us a little bit about it. It's not some FBI agent, CIA, NSA thing from what I can tell here. I mean, I've got a real employee here. He's not conspiratorial or trying to take over the world, people. Tell us what Blockstream's all about.
To be honest, I'm kind of surprised you haven't had a few of the other Blockstream guys on before, because they tend to be quite prominent people in the space. But yeah, it's something that we kind of face on a daily basis. It's kind of always bubbling along, particularly on forums like Reddit. There's quite a few people on Twitter too. I mean, I could put it down to two things. One is that a lot of people at Blockstream are Bitcoin orgies, and they were very disparaging towards the big blockers and the Bitcoin Cash guys, and then subsequently the Bitcoin SV guys. And I think that created a lot of bad blood. And then later, both of those projects failed quite miserably and continue to fail. And I think quite a few people working at Blockstream have not been shy about kind of rubbing that in on social media. And so I think it kind of encourages people to find whatever ammunition they can online to kind of try and potentially damage our business, at least in their minds. So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on.
I gotta tell you, that was an incredibly honest take on the whole situation. That was really good. Pound that like button, everyone. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people say things, they get people angry, and then those angry people, they come back with wild ideas. But you didn't. That was cool. You said even your side of it, is not perfect. It's not perfect. Now, were you a Bitcoin? I don't want to call you a Bitcoin maximalist, but were you a huge Bitcoin fan before you started working at Blockstream, or did that shape your mind at all?
So I've been working at Blockstream for a year now, but yeah, I've been in Bitcoin since 2014. I started messing around with Bitcoin in 2013. So like, in the beginning, I messed around with a few altcoins. I'll be absolutely honest, but it didn't take that long for me to realize that Bitcoin was the only serious game in town. So yeah, by the time I joined Blockstream, I was already a devout maximalist. Being at Blockstream, pretty much the same. Yeah.
And I want to say Samson has been on the show before, but I didn't.
Okay,
it was so long ago now. We didn't get into the FUD aspects. It was more of he was covering topics, whatever the main topics of that week in Bitcoin was at that time. So how does a person before Block? I mean, why did you choose to go in this direction to work in the field? And is it you've got a marketing background, I assume, and I think this space needs so many more marketing people. What advice would you give people if they want to get a job in the space?
So answering the first question, why I joined. So like I started in the industry in 2014 because I'd become so obsessed with Bitcoin. I was absolutely certain that this was going to become a really important technology, a really important revolution, and that, like, for example, the existing, this is my thought process at the time, the existing financial system has a lot of very wealthy people that are very successful, and that this seems to be the new financial system of the future. So this is like a good career move for me. But I think after being in the industry for a few years, like there's still an element of that for sure, but also you become a bit more ideological in your involvement with Bitcoin, and you realize that it's actually an important project to succeed more broadly for society. And I think there's a bit of that going on too. And advice for people getting in the industry, like I think what you said is spot on. Right now, there's a lot of very technical people, a lot of geeky people, and they're the kind of people that Bitcoin appeals to. And I think there's a lot of room, a lot of space for people that are good at marketing, people that are good at business development, and they're very hard to find in general. So, for example, we're looking for a content person to help us produce some guides at the moment, and it's really difficult finding somebody that like kind of has that like that kind of those human skills to be able to write really nice, engaging, consumer-friendly content, but then also like understands this quite like deep, hard tech, which is still at the moment quite difficult to use. Yeah, so I'd say there's lots of space for people with those kind of skills, and they should get involved if they have them.
By the way, everyone, Neil is linked to below. Everything we talk about in this video is basically linked to below. Check out the links section. Follow me on Twitter at TechBalt, TechBalt. Now, you said there's some ideological beliefs in here. People really strongly believe in this. I think you mentioned, I know in one of your tweets, you mentioned the institutions. Institutions, they're all about the money. Does Bitcoin need the institutions to come into the space? Or and you've tweeted about this, so that's why I'm asking around this question here. What's your take on institutions coming into the space? Should we be waiting for them breathlessly to save the world, to pump the price, or are they not necessary?
So I think there's kind of a common meme going around at the moment where people are saying things like, okay, so the next stage of Bitcoin's development requires the institutions to come in. That's how we get like Bitcoin's price to the next level, Bitcoin adoption to the next level. I don't think that's necessarily the case. The tweet storm that you referenced came from a conversation I was having with a good Bitcoin friend who I was very surprised suggested that we'd seen the end of the days of these gigantic Bitcoin bull runs, because now Bitcoin was a much more institutional game. There's a lot more kind of corporate investors, and they'll smooth the price out somehow, and we'll not see these kind of big bull runs anymore. And one of the reasons he was saying that happens was because they take profit earlier. And I think that's a perfect example of why institutions will not drive this market and won't drive it for a long time to come. Because, I mean, the way institutions work is they have shareholders and they're responsible to their shareholders. And the shareholders tend to be pretty risk averse and have very different goals. They do look for short-term profits. And what that results in is these institutions, they may purchase Bitcoin, but when they've made like any kind of decent amount of profit, then they're going to sell their Bitcoin. Now, if they're selling their Bitcoin, they will perpetually be in that very kind of large group of people that are fighting over the Bitcoin that are left. And the Bitcoin that are left, this amount is decreasing all of the time, because what we have on the other side of the equation is people like you and me, and kind of the broader market of these kind of individual sovereign investors, who are just buying up the Bitcoin and sitting on it. They're not selling for anything, and I would kind of call them Morpheus hodlers after that famous Bitcoin meme, where Morpheus is like, you're not going to need to sell these when Bitcoin succeeds. What these individual investors are waiting for is the death of fiat, and like Bitcoin to replace their dollar or their pound or their euro. And the institutions aren't doing that. They're just looking for making some kind of short-term. I'm generalizing, of course. I'm sure there's a few, for example, family offices that are probably thinking in kind of more generational terms. But in general, most of the institutions are not. They're in it for a fast buck, and that has a massive downside as well, because it means when the price is doing crazy things like going down very quickly, they're also some of the first people to sell, because again, they have responsibility to their shareholders who are more risk averse, And even if they're not more risk averse, the people managing these funds will feel like they potentially are. And so they're going to be some of the first people to start panic selling. And that's in direct contrast to the hodlers of last resort, who are just going to, they've got a much higher risk tolerance. You and I, like, probably spent a few years training our hodl skills, and are much more willing to wait it out and keep on reducing that supply.
Yeah, we've got this,
like
strong hands, baby, strong hands. I'm sorry, continue.
Exactly, yeah. And like in addition to this, like kind of compounding this problem is that institutions largely they like custodians. They think custodians are okay. And we know in Bitcoin that, like, for individuals, custodians are definitely not a good move. Whether you're using an exchange or a custodial wallet or something like that, like at some point, that centralization of risk is going to go wrong. You're going to have an inside job, or somebody's going to go and hack or socially engineer the Bitcoins that exist there. And then even if none of that happens, if like the financial system starts to be threatened and like we get into kind of like an end game scenario, who knows what like kind of like authorities will do with all of the Bitcoins sitting in these very kind of cozy honeypots at the custodians. And like just because you're an institution doesn't mean you're not under threat of those kind of risks. So yeah, I think like they also have that to contend with. It's kind of a hidden risk that they're not factoring into their models.
Wow, I like your take on custodial, the custodians here. We're on the same page there. Definitely control your own private key. But so many people getting into the space are impulsive and they want the quick buck. They want to leave it wherever, and they think they're used to the traditional ways. The traditional system was someone else took care of your wealth for you. So there are going to be so many people opting into that. But you've definitely identified many impulsive aspects of this space. And that will lead to the lots of volatility here. And I do want to read your tweet out that we're referencing, or one of them. There are experienced Bitcoiners that still think that the era of insane Bitcoin bull runs are behind us and that price will just increase steadily because the market is more mature or something. Boy, are they in for a surprise. Yeah, and I agree with that. Is going to be a roller coaster, and people, he just said it, have a strong hand, get ready for the roller coaster for the various reasons that we just talked about. Now, you came up with an interesting term, sovereign retail investor. A sovereign retail investor. Dig a little deeper. Explain that to us a little bit, what you meant by that.
I'm just thinking of the term sovereign individuals, which is popularized by that book, and mixing it with retail investors. So right now, Bitcoin is entirely driven by retail investors, individuals purchasing Bitcoin for their own personal savings, and they're either kind of very sovereign-minded when they purchase the Bitcoin initially, or they're buying it for the go to the moon, get rich quick, and then slowly, if they manage to hold the Bitcoins, will kind of have their ideology converted, changed, and they'll become more sovereign just through the act of holding Bitcoin. So I definitely fell into the latter category. I bought my first Bitcoin because I saw the price going up, and I was very kind of normie NPC when I first got into Bitcoin, and it wasn't until I kind of enjoyed because I bought in 2013, so I enjoyed that first bull run very early, right? And that got me extremely excited about Bitcoin. So I was like, why is this happening? Like, what is this thing? And that kind of sent me on like what people call the rabbit hole, which is like not just about kind of Bitcoin's technology, but it necessarily involves a lot of economics and politics, and the journey's still going. Like I'm still learning things on a daily basis. So yeah, I think essentially that's what a sovereign retail investor is. It's just the guys on the street, regular people buying Bitcoin for themselves and then hodling it until the end game.
Yeah, I just question how independent some of these guys are, how independent minded A lot of the people are who just buy it and then panic and flip. Maybe I'm making too many generalizations about that type of. Maybe they are independent. They just don't have strong hands.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. I think the majority of Bitcoin holders are probably fall into that category. I think a lot of people are just looking forward to getting rich quick, but there's kind of a conversion process going on there, and the ranks of these sovereign retail investors is definitely growing. And like I say, just through holding Bitcoin and kind of learning a bit more about it, people become more sympathetic to that worldview. So like, yeah, and they're the people that are wrapping up the Bitcoin. Like they're the people that are kind of taking Bitcoin out of the supply, and everybody else, like the institutions and the impulsive people that you mentioned, are buying and selling, and the kind of the pool that they're interacting with, the pool of Bitcoins that they're interacting with, is decreasing like on a daily basis.
Now, I've got another quote of yours here. Bitcoin, if it works, is the trigger for the next major enlightenment. It forces normal people to think in ways they never had to before. Now, I do agree with that. It does force certain normal people to think in ways they never had to before. But I don't think most people are ready to get that deep down in their thinking process. And for that reason, there are a lot of people out there that believe in hyperbitcoinization, that one day Bitcoin will be the money of the world. I don't believe it will be. I believe it'll just be the store of value, the money of the world for just people who are willing to think. What's your, again, so a major enlightenment amongst people who are able to be enlightened. So do you believe in hyperbitcoinization? What's your take?
Yeah, I think I believe in hyperbitcoinization. I think there's two kind of processes at work. One is the kind of inevitable collapse of the contemporary financial system, which we know to be extremely flawed and full of risk, and getting worse every year. So that's going on, and that will lead to an inevitable requirement for some replacements. And then at the same time, we've got kind of the development of Bitcoin. The longer it survives, the more confident we can be that it will continue to survive. And also the technology is improving, bugs are getting found and repaired. I think as well, people are learning that kind of sound money and Austrian economics are becoming more and more popularized. And I can't see that trend reversing or kind of plateauing anytime soon. So I think it would be very difficult for a replacement fiat to compete with Bitcoin when things start to go wrong, because people will be very distrustful of the old models, and they'll have this new model which will be extremely successful by that point to move over to. So yeah, I buy into the hyperbitcoinization idea. I don't think, I mean, it's difficult for anybody to predict these kind of things, right? We're all just using conjecture. So it's also believable to me that it would just be the domain of individuals that are kind of sovereign-minded, freedom-minded, and want to avoid the kind of existing kind of authoritative systems that are the alternative. But I think hyperbitcoinization is pretty likely.
Well, the future, we shall see. I am excited for the future. The new systems, people opting out of the old system, all sorts of innovations. Now, speaking of innovations, and I'm going to go back to Blockstream, a lot of times people, and you get asked this question, we all get asked these questions. What if the internet goes down? Bitcoin is worthless. But wait a second. Blockstream is working, the Blockstream satellite. Tell us about what happens if the internet goes down. Tell us about this Blockstream satellite.
Yeah, so I think it's a common no-coin argument that you hear that if Bitcoin succeeds, then the governments will just switch off the internet, and they're like, "Ha, we've got you." But unfortunately, like there's already been a lot of people thinking about this problem. Blockstream, the team at Blockstream being one of those groups, and there's already solutions out there that could allow Bitcoin to continue to operate in internetless environments. Blockstream satellite essentially is a satellite network. So 4 satellites that are orbiting the planet on a I can't remember the word for it. Anyway, they're orbiting the planet at the same speed as the Earth spins, so they're always in the same place.
Geosynchronous.
They receive geosynchronous. That's the word. Sorry.
Yeah.
And they're receiving Bitcoin blockchain data from teleports based around the planet, and they beam this Bitcoin blockchain data down across pretty much all of the populated areas in the world. So you've got a small area of Eastern Europe and the Middle East, which is not getting caught by those signals. But everywhere else, basically anywhere there's a population of people, they're receiving the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, to receive those signals, all you need is some really standard equipment, which can be bought for probably under like $100, $120. You need a satellite dish, which is exactly the same as you use for receiving TV signals. You need a computer. The computer requirement's very low. You could use a Raspberry Pi or a Rock64. And then also something called an SDR, which is a little bit of hardware USB stick, which you put into your computer, and it decodes the signals coming from the satellite. And what that allows you to do is operate a full node anywhere on the planet without the internet. Now, like that kind of solves only one part of using Bitcoin equation. So you got a full node now. You can verify any incoming transactions, and you can know for certain that you've received a transaction. However, what you can't do is send a transaction out because you need to get that transaction to the miners so that they can add it to the blockchain. And so Blockstream Satellite is intended to be combined with multiple other technologies. So you can use things like mesh networks. There's an integration already with goTenna, which allows you to basically send like Bitcoin transaction data from your node to another person with a goTenna, to another person to a goTenna. And you can do a maximum of 3 hops. And then the person at the end, they have a few options. They can, if they've got an internet connection, they can send that to the internet, and then it can get mined onto the blockchain. Or they could use SMS to send it to another internet relay to get it onto the internet. Technically, you could actually like send it directly to a miner, and then they could like add it to the blockchain themselves, but like that wouldn't be particularly scalable. So one thing to bear in mind is that these internet-free solutions are kind of intended to be used in a localized manner. They're kind of internet minimized, because at some point you really need somebody connected to the internet to get that transaction data to a miner, which is online. But yeah, the satellite is extremely important for these low internet or no internet environments, because the Bitcoin blockchain requires a lot of bandwidth, like a lot of bandwidth. And these mesh network solutions, they have very low bandwidth support. So the satellite signal is received passively. It can download a lot of data. I think the full last 24 hours of blocks are broadcast on a broadcast 4 times a day. So that's kind of like the bandwidth that you can achieve with these things. Actually, you can achieve more. We're just that's kind of the package that we got with the satellite network. So that's essentially how it works.
Quite an innovation over there coming from the Blockstream people, contributing so much to this space, people. Much respect to them. No more fudding them, people. Come on. So when we're talking about innovations that Blockstream's working on, how about the Liquid Network? What's this all about, this Liquid Network? I forgot someone tried to explain it on here before, but let's get it straight from the horse's mouth, the Liquid Network.
Right, so I spend most of my time on Liquid, so I can talk to this quite well. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what Liquid is. It's probably it's something that we need to improve our communications on, for sure. Basically, it's a Bitcoin sidechain intended specifically for exchanges and traders. It's meant for trading applications. And what we mean by a sidechain, essentially, it's another blockchain, but instead of having miners, they're replaced by something called a federation. And that federation, it's 15 exchanges. They each have a piece of hardware called an HSM. And these HSMs, in a round robin style, are signing the blocks in the network. And they're essentially operating this sidechain. And it's a slightly more centralized model, which like we're very transparent and open about. But that brings a lot of advantages because it allows more efficient transactions, so you can make transactions more faster, but also it allows us to deploy new technologies on Bitcoin that perhaps would take like decades to get onto the main protocol. So, for instance, Liquid has confidential transactions, which is a technology also developed at Blockstream, which is a really cool privacy tech, which allows all of the users of the blockchain to transact with each other while hiding the type of asset that they're transacting with, and also the amount of the transaction, the amount of the asset that they're transacting with. So all you can see is funds have moved from this address to that address, but you don't know how much or what has gone there. And the sidechain still retains all of the verifiability, so you know that there's no kind of inflation going on there. And so the cool thing about a sidechain is what it allows you to do is move your Bitcoin from the main chain to the sidechain in a verifiable manner. So you basically lock up a Bitcoin on the main chain, and then it's released on the sidechain. And this process is called a peg-in. And once this Bitcoin is on the sidechain, it can move around very, very quickly using all of the confidential transaction technology. We'll soon be introducing simplicity to Liquid as well, which is kind of a blockchain programming language. So it allows you to do some really, really like kind of expressive stuff with smart contracts. So you've got this Bitcoin flying around, and then at any point you can choose to peg that Bitcoin out, and it releases the Bitcoin on the main chain. And anybody can run a full node on Liquid, on the Liquid sidechain. So you can't mine any blocks, but you can verify that like everything is working as it's intended to be working. So you can verify, for instance, that every single Bitcoin on the Liquid network is backed up one-to-one with a Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network. So you know there's no inflation, and you know that your Liquid Bitcoins can be pegged out to Bitcoin. And then in addition to this cool interaction with Bitcoin, what you can also do on Liquid is issue your own assets. So you can create new tokens for anything that you want, and they're native to the Liquid network. They're kind of different in nature to the Bitcoin on the Liquid network because you're completely dependent on the issuer of each of these assets. So it's not trustless. It's not really trust minimized. It's you're completely dependent on whoever's issued that asset. But what it does allow you to do is do really cool things like atomic swaps between Bitcoin and those assets. And you can still use all of the same kind of technologies that we use on Bitcoin, like multi-sig, time locks, that kind of thing. And like, I think a lot of people are worried that Liquid will get used for shitcoining, including myself. I think it probably will happen, and there's nothing we can do about that. It's an open network. Anybody can issue an asset as long as they've got a Liquid full node. But like, I think it could be used for more kind of less ethically challenged projects that are used in the trading industry, such as stablecoins and security tokens as well, which a lot of people, they haven't really taken off yet, but a lot of people are talking about kind of being a new kind of thing. And security tokens and stablecoins are not like, I mean, I'm sure there will be a few scams built on those as well, but they're not necessarily that scammy, right? They're just based on existing real world assets, and we've just kind of tokenized them to transfer around on the network.
This seems very, very interesting. How many people are actually using it now, and what are your projections of when it's going to really be used, the Liquid network?
So we have a small number of a low level of activity on the Liquid network right now. It's definitely not taking off in any big way yet. I think one thing that has to happen before that can happen is we need more exchange integrations to go live. So at the moment, the main exchanges that are available are Bitfinex, the Rock Trading, SideShift, and Coinit as well. We just added Coinit recently. And really what this technology is good for is, for example, if you're an arbitrage trader, you want to be moving funds around exchanges faster than your competition so that you can take advantage of trading differentials, trading opportunities faster than the other traders. And for them to be able to do that, they're going to need more exchanges that have that liquid Bitcoin in, liquid Bitcoin out, and as well as like things like we have like Tether on the Liquid network as well. People need those integrations to go live. So we have a bit of a chicken and egg problem there, I'll be honest, but we do have a number of exchanges that are working on integrations right now. And I think once they start to go live, we'll have more traders experimenting with Liquid and driving a bit more activity. As well, one thing that I've started saying, I got this from Samson recently, is Liquid is kind of a bit of an insurance policy for the trading industry for the next big bull run. So like I say, I don't think we've seen the end of bull runs for a long time yet. And when the next one comes, a lot of people are saying it's going to be coming after the next halvening. The Bitcoin network is going to get clogged up. People have like Tether on like Ethereum and Omni and stuff like this. Like these networks are going to get clogged up. It's going to be very difficult for people to move their funds around all of the different exchanges for trading applications. And Liquid would allow people to continue moving. It would allow the spice to flow. It would allow people to continue moving their funds around the exchanges, allow people to still continue buying and selling in that like high pressure environment. And like these things can go on for like 2-3 months, right? I remember making a few transactions myself for like $30, $40 back in the last bull run. So this is kind of an alternative to that.
Wow, this will lower, perhaps keep the people out that were saying, "Oh, everything's so slow, I can't move it, it's too expensive." This might help. And good point. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to say at first when you were describing this Liquid network, I thought, is this going to hurt stable coins? Is this going to hurt Tether? But in fact, it's going to help them. It appears to me. Am I misunderstanding this?
I mean, it's the obvious platform for the stablecoins to issue on. Like, they don't need all of the like hardcore decentralization that comes with Bitcoin. They don't need that. They need more efficiency, and Liquid provides that with still like some very, very strong security benefits. And in addition to that, like, so right now, like if you're a whale or an institution, you're making a large transaction, you're announcing it on a public network every time you make a trade. And so people can front run those. Like you have people monitoring the blockchain, like trading on the information that they get from that. With Liquid, nobody knows that stuff is going on. So yeah, it's really, as well, like you get all of the, I'm kind of doing a bit of an advert here, I hope you don't mind.
That's fine, yeah.
The another advantage is that like Liquid is based on Elements and Elements is based on Bitcoin. And so you're getting really, really strong multi-sig, strong time locks, like kind of technology that people are very confident works and like won't break. For example, like an Ethereum smart contract, these things do what they're supposed to do. So you can do like a lot of interesting applications on top of that as well. The atomic swaps being a good example.
One thing that you brought up that's very interesting is that some of the larger whales that are making a lot of trades, it'll somewhat privatize. People won't be able to see exactly what they're doing. On that subject matter, are there any second layer privacy solutions that people are working on over there at Blockstream now that you could talk about?
The research team will definitely have at least one or two things going on with that. I can't speak to them. You'll have to get Andrew Puelstra on the show. He can give you a rundown on some interesting privacy tech that'll be.
Are you personally concerned about privacy and stuff? I mean, do you think Bitcoin needs to become more private right now? Is it a lot of people are we need a second layer solution right now for privacy? Some people say.
Yes, definitely concerned about Bitcoin's privacy. It needs to be improved. I think Matt Odell, for instance, recently was saying that it's possible. So, like with existing technologies, CoinJoins, Wasabi, Samurai, it's possible to transact with Bitcoin privately already, but it requires a lot of work and a lot of learning. And so, with these solutions, these ideas need to start getting integrated for the average user to take advantage of them. I think as well, there'll be more kind of demand, which will create more developments on the privacy side once we start to see more kind of downsides of people not using Bitcoin in a private way. So like people getting attacked, mugged, kidnapped, things like that, or some kind of state interventions like IRS checking people based on blockchain data. I think once those kind of things start happening, like all of a sudden there'll be some really fast developments around Bitcoin privacy.
Yes, the pressure will be on to figure out the situation once it gets really bad. Hey, was there something else you were going to say there? I kind of interrupted you before. I didn't mean to break your chain of thought. I don't know if there was something you meant to say. Okay.
If you did, I've already forgotten it. So
okay, cool.
So
I've got a question on a current event. I wanted to hear your take on Libra. And do you think that'll get more people into Bitcoin eventually? Do you think Libra is actually going to happen?
I mean, I wrote a few tweets on this as well. Like, I wrote Libra off pretty much immediately after hearing it was getting launched. I haven't dove particularly deeply into how it works. Somebody was telling me the other day that the technology is cool. I'm not particularly interested in the technology. I'm more interested in like the application, what it's doing. And I think it's totally unrelated to Bitcoin. There's no way in hell that any kind of authorities are going to allow Facebook to do anything that skirts regulations. It'll be a pure fintech product. It'll be part of the system if it ever gets launched. It'll not have anything to do with Bitcoin. It'll not be useful for people trading Bitcoin because of all the controls that'll surround it. Perhaps like for the average person, it'll kind of be like, it'll get them used to the idea of like a digital currency. But to be honest, I think people are already there when it comes to digital currencies. For example, like I used to live in China and everybody's using WeChat and Alipay. That's just basically digital currency and a mobile wallet. I use Revolut. It's like a great service, to be honest. I mean, like as far as fintech goes, again, that kind of like comes across as digital currency. So like, I can't see people getting into it that much as well. Like one of the massive attractions of Bitcoin that we can't get away from is like number goes up. Like people are in it for the pump. And as much as we try to like say like people are in it for the technology and the freedom and stuff, like a very large part of this movement is that the potential for people to get rich from holding it. Like that's not happening with Libra. Like there's no price appreciation opportunities there. People are only going to be buying it so that they can use it at certain merchants and stores. And like, is there going to be that much demand for people to spend at certain stores with a certain currency? Like, all very questionable to me.
You had a tweet about that that's part of the interest that when fiat price goes up, hey man, I believe in one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, but not everyone can be like that. People are used to the way things have worked for a while, and they want to make a quick buck, a long buck. Who knows what they want to do? But yeah, good point. With Libra, you're not exactly going to be able to speculate on it from at least the way it's been defined to me. It's not going to go up. And supposedly,
I mean, like on this topic, like you asked me earlier, one of the reasons why I joined Blockstream. So I worked at OKCoin in 2014. After that, I left and started a startup called Remitsi with Richard Bensberg, who's also now working at Blockstream. And then we got acquired by Wire. So Remitsi and Wire were cross-border payment companies that used Bitcoin in the middle to convert like the source currency to the destination currency. And they were used for business payments. But having worked at OKCoin, Remitsi, and Wire, you're interacting with fiat. And as soon as you touch fiat as any kind of business, you get caught in this kind of regulatory web. And it's particularly difficult when you're working in the cryptocurrency space because pretty much everybody's business is global. You need to be able to service global demand. And that means you're not only interacting with the regulations at home, you're also interacting with the regulations in various different other countries. And these can sometimes kind of conflict with each other, and it becomes an absolute nightmare. And I found like over time, I was getting increasingly frustrated with the fact that I was spending like over half of my day dealing with regulatory issues. And I was working in things like business development and marketing. That shouldn't have been factoring into kind of my day. Like that should be a compliance department thing, but like everybody is affected by it at every level of the company. And it leads to you making all sorts of stupid decisions, business decisions that you wouldn't have made otherwise. And just gets you down. And like at the moment, for example, payments, which is the industry that Remitsi and Wire were working in, they're in the contemporary fintech arena. These are regulatory games. They're regulatory industries, not technology industries. So everybody is just kind of regulatory arbitrage or automating certain regulatory processes, and that's what like builds these like great fintech products like Revolut, for instance. But if we move to a new Bitcoin financial system, that returns everything to a question of technology. Like regulation will factor in not at all or very, very little. And so all of these kind of skills and this knowledge and this experience that you build up, which is like kind of pretty much the majority of your day in like navigating regulation, becomes completely useless in this kind of Bitcoin future. So if you really strongly believe in kind of hyperbitcoinization, it means that like by joining these kind of fiat interaction businesses, you're going to be wasting a lot of your time and developing skills that are going to be a dead end in the future. So like that was one of the big drivers for me joining Blockstream. They are like pure technology company. They provide technology to companies that are regulated. So like it's still there, and it's almost impossible to escape given how easy it is to regulate businesses right now. But it's certainly minimized. I can't remember what started this, but essentially that's the Libra thing. Libra will be in that category. They're going to be wholly regulated, and so they're going to spend most of their time kind of like bending to the whims of various officials in various countries to make things work. They'll only be able to roll out one country at a time. They're not going to be able to service the whole world at the same time. The Bitcoin future is not like that. Like in the future, like Bitcoin services will be based in Bitcoin-friendly jurisdictions, and they'll be able to service the entire world, and they're not going to have to worry about all of these various different regulations.
Excellent points. Pound that like button, people. I've got a question about the current situation in Bitcoin, which takes some people are used to making investments in the traditional system and getting interest or doing loans with their fiat, relying on third parties. What do you think of the trend in the Bitcoin space of people trying to do similar things? People loaning out their Bitcoin and getting interest on their Bitcoin. What's your take on that right now, given current technology?
Yeah, I think the rate at which Bitcoin's price has historically increased and the rate of kind of adoption and developments in Bitcoin suggest that will probably continue, or at least I would expect it to continue. I see no reason to kind of maximize that further by lending out Bitcoin for interest. In particular, I think some of the interest-bearing options at the moment, I'm not going to name any names, like I've seen kind of rumors flying around Twitter of like kind of how questionable their practices are. whether they could, like, so if these coins are being lent out, they're probably being used to short cryptocurrencies. And like, if we enter a bull market, like, how sustainable is that going to be? Yeah, so two things. One, like, it's got to be high risk, and two, I just see no need to do that given how successful Bitcoin has been up to this point. So I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot barge pole. But then at the same time, like, risk can bear rewards. So like, if people are willing to engage with that and know what they're doing, then fair play to them. I hope it works out. I know, like, I definitely have friends that have engaged in lending on exchanges. So some of the exchanges provide P2P lending options and have done very well out of it and hasn't collapsed on them. It was sustainable for a few years at least. So maybe it'll work out. All
right. Yeah, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole either. Now, I like how you said that. I've actually said the same line before. Now, Bitcoin, the 18 millionth Bitcoin was just a mined. Yay! But at the same time, we have some concern trolling out there, I would say, from people wondering about could we expand the amount of Bitcoin in the future? Is 21 million really a hard limit? You and I both lived through the block size debate. I am pretty confident that the next big prominent debate that will try to split Bitcoin and will end up in a fork will be this, the limit. What's your take on that? Do you foresee this ending in a very similar Bcash type situation?
So yes, I think not from the current cohort of people that are pushing for it. I don't think they have nearly as much support as they potentially think they have at the moment. However, it's the obvious attack vector that Bitcoin will probably face for the rest of its existence. So like, let's say this is 1,000, 2,000-year-old technology. Like, we're going to see multiple efforts to introduce inflation in Bitcoin because it's the easiest way to kill it. And I have very little patience for the current crop of people that are kind of promoting very hard and repeatedly for inflation on Bitcoin. I think they have their own biases that they are not willing to admit to. There's a reason why they keep on coming back to this topic when it's not a pressing issue. The security on Bitcoin is not under question at the moment. There's a reason why they keep on coming back to it. And like, I find that the people that are promoting inflation in Bitcoin and kind of concern trolling about the security model are often the kind of people that perhaps have been in Bitcoin for a long time and are not completely bought into the kind of cypherpunk, libertarian, Austrian economic, anarchic worldview that like a lot of other Bitcoiners have like either bought into when they got into Bitcoin or kind of came around to after being in Bitcoin for a while. They tend to be the people that have resisted that the most. And I find that very fascinating that like inflation is a very kind of statist pastime. And then these people seem to have failed to have shed some of those kind of worldviews after being in Bitcoin for a long time. Like, and they keep on pushing, like they're repeatedly pushing inflation, finding like, okay, so that angle didn't work. Okay, well, how about this problem? Like maybe we need inflation for that. Yeah, so I'm kind of very questioning. And like when you kind of confront them about it, they're always just kind of just asking questions. I'm just like, if we can't challenge these ideas, like we're just living in this dogmatic kind of industry, and things will get dangerous because everybody's got this kind of groupthink. But like they're never willing to. I'm very clear about my views about Bitcoin, and I'm like, I have biases of my own, and I'm very explicit about them. But these people will not kind of commit to any of their ideas, and I find that a little bit duplicitous as well. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say you don't think it'll be the current crop that'll be successful. Yeah, I would agree almost that there will be a future prominent person who is very pro Bitcoin that will switch to this inflationary Bitcoin, and that will trigger. It will take a change of a prominent person to really spark the next Bcash type of situation. So it's just something for people to prepare for.
Yeah, and we'll have like loads more people entering the industry, lots of charismatic people that like bring lots of like great ideas. Yeah, and like we don't know how those people are going to kind of change the conversation in the future. So I think it's definitely something that's going to happen. Like there are two ways to screw around with Bitcoin, right? Change the block size, add some inflation, and like they're just going to be. It's going to be an endless battle. Like we're not going to like kind of finalize that. There's not going to be any full stop. It's going to continue, and like there are always going to be powers that have something to gain from Bitcoin failing. So, we just gotta kind of be vigilant and teach our kids to be vigilant and grandkids. And, yeah,
it's a hard limit, people. 21 million. All right, Neil Woodfine. We have reached the end of the show. It has been a pleasure. Do you have any conclusionary remarks? Anything you wanted to add? Any subject matters that were left off? Current events you wanted to bring up? Promotions? Anything? The floor is yours.
I think we've covered everything. That was a really good chat. I think if anybody's interested in finding more about Liquid, definitely check out the Blockstream site. We have quite a lot of new content there these days. Yeah, I hope there's a chance to be on the show again and doing a great job with the show.
Well, thank you very much. I do want you to come back on the show. It has been awesome. His Twitter is below. Follow him. Really good tweets out there. Very inspirational tweets. Definitely a holder of last resort. I love having the holders of last resort on here. All right, everybody. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, Disrupt Meister. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share this video, pound that like button, bang that bell button. If this show is airing on Friday, which most of the This Week in Bitcoin shows do, but we might be changing that up. I'd like to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. We do the This Week in Bitcoin show every week, usually on Fridays. So tune in here every Friday, every day, because you never know what you're going to get here. Saturday is usually the Beyond Bitcoin show. A new show every day. Everybody, have a great time. Thank you, Neil, again. See you guys later. Bye-bye.